Life in a samurai castle wasn't all honor and swordplay. It was disciplined, overcrowded, and often uncomfortable. Forget the movies. The real day-to-day life behind those fortress walls was a mix of strict hierarchy, constant vigilance, and surprisingly little privacy. Samurai castles, or shiro, were more than military strongholds. They were administrative centers, political hubs, and homes to entire classes of warriors, their families, and a massive support staff. And just like medieval castles in Europe, these places weren't exactly cozy. If you were a high-ranking samurai, you'd live close to the main keep, called the Tenshukaku. Your house would be larger, your armor more ornate, and your life slightly more comfortable. But most samurai weren't top tier. The majority lived further from the center, packed into small houses, waking up at dawn to train, patrol, or do paperwork. That's right, paperwork. Samurai weren't just warriors, they were also government workers. During times of peace, which was most of the Edo period, they spent much of their time handling administrative duties, settling disputes, collecting taxes, and enforcing laws for their daimyo, or feudal lord. Inside the castle walls, life was highly structured. Everyone had a place, from sword instructors to kitchen staff. The higher your rank, the more servants you had, the better your food, and the more insulated you were from the dirt and discomfort that filled the rest of the grounds. Samurai adhered to bushido, the warrior code, which emphasized honor, loyalty, and discipline. That meant you followed strict etiquette, even at home. You bowed a certain way, you spoke a certain way, and you even sat a certain way. There were rules for everything. The castles themselves were cold and dark. Built primarily from stone and wood, they weren't exactly comfortable. In winter, the interiors could be freezing, and lighting, limited. No electricity meant everything depended on candles, oil lamps, and precious daylight. Servants and lower-ranked samurai worked hard to finish their chores before the sun went down. Bathrooms were rudimentary at best. No plumbing, just wooden buckets, holes in the ground, and communal facilities with zero privacy. Waste was carried away manually. And yes, rats were a thing, a big thing. They scurried through the walls, infested storerooms, and sometimes even nibbled on the rice. Samurai families lived within the castle grounds or nearby in the surrounding castle town, known as a jokamachi. These towns were organized by class. Merchants, artisans, and lower-ranked samurai lived in carefully planned districts. Every block was designed for control and surveillance. If something went wrong, the daimyo needed to know, and fast. Food was another reminder of the hierarchy. The daimyo and his top advisors dined on fresh fish, fine rice, pickled vegetables, and delicacies spiced with rare seasonings. Everyone else made do with simple stews, millet, or whatever was available. Meals were eaten on mats, with lower-ranking individuals often watching their superiors eat first. But castle life wasn't all work and discomfort. There were rituals and pleasures, too. Samurai practiced calligraphy, tea ceremony, poetry, and played traditional instruments like the shamisen. These cultural activities weren't hobbies. They were part of what made a samurai civilized. Festivals were held for New Year's, cherry blossom season, or in honor of specific gods. The castle might light up with lanterns, fill with music, and briefly relax its strictness. But even celebrations followed rules, and everything happened on a schedule. Hot baths were taken when possible, though not daily. Water was heated manually and poured into large wooden tubs. Bathing was seen as both hygienic and spiritual, and for many samurai, a rare chance to relax. One thing that often gets overlooked is how boring castle life could be. When there were no battles, no travel, and no major festivals, time dragged. Reading, practicing martial arts, and managing documents took up the bulk of the day. Sometimes, younger samurai got in trouble just trying to break the monotony. Of course, not everyone in the castle was samurai. There were blacksmiths, cooks, pages, and stable workers. Most of them were born into their roles and never saw much upward movement. They cooked, cleaned, carried water, or tended horses, and they answered to someone who answered to someone else. At the very top was the daimyo, who rarely walked the grounds without a full retinue. His word was law. He lived in the finest part of the castle, wore the most luxurious clothing, and had complete control over the lives beneath him. But even he had limits. The shogunate in Edo kept daimyo in check, requiring them to leave their families behind in the capital or travel back and forth under the Sankin Kotai system. It was like a built-in control mechanism, part loyalty, part hostage situation. In the end, life in a samurai castle was about balance, discipline and luxury, brutality and refinement. It was a place where you might train for war in the morning, write a poem by noon, and soak in a steaming bath by night, if you were lucky. But for most who lived behind those towering stone walls, it was a life of duty, order, and quiet sacrifice. Still, if you were born in that era, living in a samurai castle was about as prestigious as it got, unless you were a servant scrubbing the floors with no shoes and no future. For them, the grandeur of the castle was something they cleaned but never owned. Would you have wanted to live in a samurai castle? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more interesting history stories, check out my other videos.